Hello, how are you? Welcome to episode 1 of I read a book and I think you should too. I'm your host Avantika Reza Vastola. So let's move on. What book are we talking about today? Drum rolls please. It's The Last of the Incas. What is this book about? Who wrote this book? Good question. Good question. This book is based on the Spanish colonization, conquest, whatever you say, of the Spanish conquistadors. It's also about the resistance of Incas and a little bit about the exploration of the Inca Empire, the modern exploration of the Inca Empire by different groups of people, and talks a little bit about how it went. So that's interesting. And who is the author? The author is Kim McGuire or something. He is a filmmaker and author. What else? Explorer, I believe. He lived in Peru for around 5 years. He studied a lot about South America, lived in Peru. So I think he's credible. He has his other works about South America as well. So I think he's a good person to be reading from. Um so what's next? What's next? Inca Empire. The very empire on which the book is based. So what's the Inca Empire? Have you heard the name? Have you? Or have you not? Nevertheless, I will tell you about it a little bit. Just the Inca Empire was the largest, the biggest, the most powerful civilization in pre-Columbian South America. It's also known as the most powerful empire of the Americas. Remember, the most powerful and largest empire. According to the Inca mythology and historical accounts, the Inca people are believed to be the descendants of sun god Inti, and they emerged from the depths of Lake Titicaca. Does it sound realistic to us? It does not. But if you were born a few thousand years earlier, would it sound real to you? It would, it would, it would. So Sun is at the center of this empire, is at the center of their relation. Sun is very powerful, almighty. They worship their kings, or not worship, they consider the kings as the descendants of sun god. They're very powerful. Um, the Inca Empire, like any other empires in the world, was made up of was was initially different groups, subgroups, different ethnic groups having their own groups, different tribes having their own groups, until in the early 15th century, the king Pachacuti, something respectfully, he started the formation of the Inca Empire. He's fought wars with different groups, tribes. He won some, he won diplomatically, some there were bloodsheds, and he won. And there was an Inca Empire, the big, the mighty, the powerful. Um, there are a few things I want you to know about Inca Empire. First, they didn't have a written language. They didn't have a written text like we have English, like I have Devanagari script. They didn't have it, but what they did have is kipu. They would tie knots in these threads, ropes, and they did their accountings, maths, trade agreements, etc. via this kipu. That's very smart. I don't know how it would work, but it did work for them. That's cool. There's stoneworks. Do you guys know what this is? Machu Picchu. They didn't have the what do we call it? The technology of today's day, where you can cut stones, you can transport these heavy things from one place to another. They did not have those, but they did have the skill, the power, the knowledge to lay stones in a specific way that formed these strong structures that also looked magnificent, by the way. It looked great. Like, look at their architecture, it's amazing. Amazing, I want to go there. Terrace farming. Peru, or a lot of Inca empires you see, they're based on mountainous terrains. There are hills, they have slopes, but they laid there, they did farming in such a structure, they made these terraces and they planted. That's why they had a lot of agriculture produces. They were rich for agriculture. Yeah, they were not hungry as long as they had kings. They were not hungry, they were good, they were happy. At least that's what the book tells us. As long as there was king, they were happy. What more? Oh yeah, the Inca Empire. You know, every empire has its peak before it falls. And for the Incas, it was the early 16th century, 1527 to be specific, just before the Spanish conquest. At its peak, the most powerful era of the most powerful empire. It was in 1527, and it covered nearly 2 million square kilometers, making it the largest empire in the Americas before European colonization. It's just something I said earlier, but they were very big. And um, if you look at the map, this is how much they had covered. And if you look at the map of Peru now, because you know, like when you think of Inca and Cairo, you think of Peru because they're mainly based there. They had their capital in Cusco, so um, the Inca Empire covered Peru, Ecuador, including Quito, which was briefly served as the second capital. They also had Bolivia, Chile, agriculture? Argentina and Colombia. I don't think there's a point in that, but they were very big. That's what I wanted to know. And now let's talk about the fall of the Incas. The fall of Incas, I think, and what I think a lot of smart people who know about this subject think. I'm not saying I'm one of those smart people. I've just read a book. This is the first thing I've ever read about Incas. But I think I read somewhere that their actual fall started with the chicken pox that was brought in by, you guessed it, Spanish, where an emperor, Huena Capao. I'm sorry, I'm butchering the pronunciation, but it was Huan something. I don't want to Google it because I feel like I'm gonna dox myself with the search history. Um, but it was Huen Capao, and he had two sons, or more than two, but there are two main who are supposed to be heir, Atahualpa, and then there's another one. Um, there was conflict between these two sons as well. And Atahualpa gradually was on a path of winning, so he was going to be the next emperor until the Spanish attacked. The Spanish, the mastermind behind the conquest of Peru was Francisco Pizarro. The book talks a little bit about Francisco's life earlier, how he was born to poverty. He was lower class because um he didn't have a dad, like in Game of Thrones words, he was a bastard, I think. I might be wrong. It's been a while since I read this book, um, but yeah, the book talks a little bit of Francisco Pizarro, but nonetheless very ambitious person, and he brought in 167 people with him on horses. I think he had some people walking, he had some people on horses. Don't quote me on that. But he brought those to the shores of Peru, and they attacked. Not right away. They took some time. He brought Atahualpa. He called Atahualpa to meet him, and then they attacked. If you think about it, for every Spanish, there were 500 native Indians. So you think they would win, right? Because like, even if 500 people were to attack one person, they're gonna win. But that's where you're wrong. That's where I was wrong. They did not win. The Spanish won. They had horses. So when you are with horses, when you are riding horses, it's very easy for you to attack others. They had these, they had swords. Yes, they were fighters. They could fight. And due to these technologies, having the benefit of horse, and initially they were also in a closed space that made the Spanish easier to attack the native Indians. So, I have written superior weapons and superior ambush. By ambush, I mean the fact that they were in a small plaza and it was easier for them to attack the native Indians. Um, Atahualpa lost, so they thought that the Spanish would leave if they gave them their gold. So they gave them a lot of gold, a lot, because Incas, they were very rich with gold. They had a lot of gold, so Atahualpa gave them a lot of gold, thinking that they would leave because that was what was promised to him. But they didn't. They lied. They lied. Lying, cheating by the Spanish to the native Indians was a very big part, was a very big thing in the fall of Incas, because the Incas kept trusting the Indians. First, the Indians kept trusting the Spanish. First, Atahualpa trusted the Spanish. Later, Manco, Manco Inca, Titu Cusi, and Tupac Amaru, all of them trusted him. I'm not too sure about Titu Cusi though, but they died. But they trusted the Spanish again, which led to the death of Inca Empire. There were two more resistance during 40 years. First was by son. Again, I'm not even sure if it's the son or brother, but I believe it's the son of Atahualpa, Manco Inca. And then, oh, actually, no. Manco Inca was the brother they brought. Manco Inca trusted Spanish, but they were only using him as the puppet king. And he led a revolution against the Spanish, but they lost again. Losing is a big part of this book. Loss of the native Indians. And I mean, they lost. But my opinion in the book, it was a great book. It had gripping narration. I knew nothing about the Inca Empire, but I read the book. I read this on my cute little Kindle. Um, it was great. Like, he has used a lot of text from past. A lot of things Dukusi has written, Francisco Pizarro's brothers have written. He has brought in all of those texts. The storytelling in general is good in this book. It will keep you hooked. Um, it was a great story of resistance, showcasing courage and resilience. Resilience. I didn't know anything. Like I said again, I didn't know anything about the Incas. I didn't know how the Spanish conquered them. It was great to learn about it. It was great to see how they didn't back down. Even when they had nothing, they fought. They established their own capital. It was the desire to live free, following their own culture and not to fall under the Spanish's Christianity. It's the same part again. I learned a fascinating piece of Peru's past. It was great to learn about it. And also, like, not just that, something I realized I didn't mention. I mentioned it, but I didn't talk about it. Is finding of Machu Picchu. Uh, there was a American Yale's professor who went looking for the Incas capital of Vilcabamba. I realized I should have been more prepared about this. But he went looking for the capital of Vilcabamba. He said Machu Picchu was the capital, which was wrong. Oh, even though he completely didn't believe it himself, he did it for the name to establish himself, which was later proved wrong. And so there was another capital, Vilcabamba. And the story of exploration of Vilcabamba is interesting in itself. It again shows the topic of fame, the topic of greed, of not giving credits to others, not giving credits to natives who already knew, who had already found the capital of Vilcabamba. I already found Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu was a retreat. I think it was built by Pacahuti. It was a retreat. It was up in the mountains. It was cool, chill. So they lived there. They went there for a retreat. They had fun. It was not much for administrative task. Um, yeah, I'm interested in Peru. I have wanted to go to Peru, so I picked up this book. It was great. Will I read it again? I don't, because there's no point in reading it again. But do I think you should read it? If you have some interest in the history or anything, I do think you should read it. Thank you for listening. See you in next episode.